Hi, this is Korede Olawoyin from muslimpologist.com, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Adnan Rashid and the late Ahmed Deedat. Now, the late Ahmed Deedat is an apologist, a Muslim apologist that made that popular and also very lucrative. And in fact, we have a lot of students of Ahmed Deedat today engaged actively in dawah, that is calling other people into the fold of Islam. Now, Ahmed Deedat debated a lot of preachers, a lot of pastors on a number of topics of discussion, and very interesting one at that. And one of the topics he discussed or debated hotly, between himself and also Christian speakers or preachers is this one, which is Jesus God? Now, Ahmed Deedat liked that topic a lot and debated it very vigorously. And in fact, the Muslims today took after him talking about this topic of discussion. They always want to talk about it, and whenever you see them debating, you see the flair or the arguments of Ahmed Deedat in some of their debates. Now, recently, Adnan Rashid debated Sam Green on the topic of discussion, is Jesus God? And then he puts forth some few arguments that I feel originated from Ahmed Deedat. Now, even though we're in the 21st century, I believe that the influence of Ahmed Deedat is still very strong on some of these Muslim apologists, yeah? And I believe that till today, we have a lot of Muslims that have not even changed the argument, they have not upgraded it, and they are still following the footpath of the late Ahmed Deedat. Now, in some of the things that Adnan Rashid said in his debate with Sam Green, there's some things that is actually copied from Ahmed Deedat word for word. Now, you don't need to believe me. I'm just going to be showing you very briefly in this clip some of the things that I'm talking about. Now, one of the arguments that Adnan Rashid used against Sam Green in the topic of discussion was that the prologue of John was actually copied from a Greek philosopher called Philo by John into the gospel. In other words, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, was not original to John, and that John copied it from Philo and then imputed it in the gospel. Here's what Adnan Rashid said.
Surely John is trying to tell you that Jesus is not God with capital G. Rather, what he meant was that he was a divine person with lowercase d who came as an agent of God. And by the way, that wording was directly borrowed from a Greek philosopher called Philo. Philo of Alexandria, who was a contemporary of Jesus Christ, a Jewish Neoplatonic philosopher. I'm not saying this. Christian scholars have acknowledged it for a very long time, that the idea of logos actually came from Philo. Thank you so much.
Actually, this statement is not original to Adnan Rashid. This is exactly the very same thing that Ahmed Deedat said when he was debating a Christian pastor on the topic of discussion, is Jesus God? Hear what Ahmed Deedat said.
That John is saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Ask Christian scholars, where did John get these words from? Decades before John, a Greek philosopher by the name of Philo, in his philosophy he wrote this formula. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, which John copied into his gospel.
Now, somebody might make the argument and say, you see, Korede, that's a very silly argument. Sometimes people have similar presentation on a topic of discussion, so we can't deduct that one copy the other because the argument is similar. Well, that's true. I think I have an evidence to show that this is not just a similar argument kind of a thing. It's actually a copying from one person to the other. Now, let's take a look at the next one. Adnan Rashid said that the word for God is Otheos. Let's see what he says about this.
Because when you go to the Greek, here, the word for God with capital G is Hotheos.
Well, as you might have guessed, Ahmed Deedat said exactly the same thing. Here's what he says.
The word is theos. Theos in Greek means God, and the word there is Hotheos. Hotheos means the God.
Now, is it not getting very interesting that everything is rhyming together, seeing just two examples? Well, let's give them a benefit of the doubt. How about the very third one? Adnan Rashid said in his debate with Sam Green that the word for God, which is actually the word with God, and the word was God, is ton theos. Please, I want you to know that it's ton theos, not ton theon, which is actually the right Greek word used in the prologue of John, but it was ton theos. Let's see what Adnan Rashid said exactly.
And where the word is described as God, it is ton theos, which is correctly translated in many biblical translations as divine with smaller or lowercase d.
Now, interestingly, that's exactly what Ahmed Deedat said. Ahmed Deedat said that this word, which is, and the word was with God, and the word was God, was actually the Greek word ton theos. Remember, not ton theon, but ton theos, exactly the way Adnan Rashid said it. Now, here's what Ahmed Deedat said.
So there, the word the God stands for God Almighty. So we have the capital God, God. And the word was God. That second word, God, in Greek, sir, is ton theos. Ton theos in Greek means a God.
Now, obviously, from what we've seen so far, this is not the case of somebody having a similar argument with the other person. This is actually a clear case of somebody copying the other person. And in this case, it is Adnan Rashid copying Ahmed Deedat. Now, to show you more examples, in fact, I'm going to be showing you two more before we wrap this up. Now, the next example is that of Satan in the book of Corinthians. Now, you know, Adnan Rashid mentioned the fact that the translators are playing games and all of that. And then, you know, they also distorted the way Satan was called God in the book of Corinthians. To give him the word, this is actually what Adnan Rashid said.
But then, amazingly, when you go to the book of Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 4, there the word in the Greek language, hotheos, which means the God with capital G, is used for the devil, and it is translated with lowercase g.
Well, without much ado, that is exactly what Ahmed Deedat said some few years ago. Listen to him.
You see, in the book of Corinthians, you read there, and the devil is the God of this world. He is the God, hotheos in Greek. But you give him a small g. I want to know why.
And so finally, we're going to be seeing the last example I've decided to pick out. And this is the case of Adnan Rashid saying that, you see, the translators are playing games with the translation of the Bible. They're translating it anyhow they want. They're doing whatever they want to do. They're not being honest and all of that. And here's what Adnan Rashid said.
Amazingly. So what games are these translators playing? When it should be capital G, because the word is used for the devil, it is translated in modern Bibles as lowercase d.
Whereas it is now, it's no longer a surprise to you. This is exactly what Ahmed Deedat said some few years ago.
Sir, your scholars ought to give a capital G for God to the devil. But no. You see, you are playing fast and loose with these manuscripts. You translate them as you like.
Now, as we have seen so far, literally, we can see how Ahmed Deedat is speaking through the mouth of Adnan Rashid. Now, we're talking about the 21st century. Even though Ahmed Deedat has died a long time ago, but then we still have the influence, a very strong influence of Ahmed Deedat in the life of the Muslim apologists today. Even though the argument of Ahmed Deedat were very shallow, they were very unscholastic, but we're still having a lot of Muslims that are making use of this argument today. So what it shows us is that we have a lot of outdated arguments that are unfounded, that our Muslim friends are still using in the apologetic world today. Now, this is a word of advice to our Muslim friends. Please, instead of using a stale argument, an unfounded argument, an outdated argument, why don't you upgrade and also check out the things that you say before you present them? Now, for the likes of Adnan Rashid, I respect him so much and I expect something better from him. I expect him to do much more than what the Ahmed Deedat has done. But it's actually disappointing to see him that he's still re-echoing the mistakes and the blunders of Ahmed Deedat. Now, please, if you've not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe and also be a patron to us on our Patreon page. Now, we're releasing videos, we're releasing articles and some other stuff to our patrons on our Patreon page. So if you're not a patron here, please make sure you click on the link and become one. Thank you very much, and then God bless you.
You may have got that from Ahmed Deedat, but he didn't know Greek. Right? Ahmed Deedat really didn't know much of what he's talking about in this regard.
Ahmed Deedat was not my source. Just wanted to make that point very quickly.